Internet. Welcome back to that Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Ron Fortier.
Yeah, howdy, everybody.
David Rios.
Hello.
Can I see her?
And the tail of David's cat. Yeah.
Yes, the tail of my cat.
Tail of two kitties.
This is Maggie. Ah.
Oh my gosh.
There he is. All right.
Perfect.
It's like, you picked me up.
Yep. And Jose Fuentes.
Hi.
And tonight we'll be talking about how to self-publish your comic with using all the modes and technologies available to us in the present. It is now easier than ever to make your own comic and get it out into the hands of 5 to 10 people. Hopefully more.
5 to 10,000.
Exactly. So we'll be talking about all that and some of the considerations you'll need to make on if you know which method you plan on publishing before you actually get to the creation process. What sort of considerations you might want to make in layout, artwork, all that fun stuff. Yeah, I don't think we have any housekeeping at the moment. So,
Well, do we still have the?
I mean, we have our Evergoing.
Yeah, our operational.
Yeah. Which things have changed. Where it's no longer where it was. We've lost our QR code.
Oh no!
But we do have this thing. So if you want to head on over to that URL and support our ongoing operational expenses and all that good stuff, please do so. Then pick up some back issues if you like, anything of that sort. Tons of swag and stuff we have hanging out.
A lot of great stuff from a lot of great creators.
Yes.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Overstock, and it's some really, really good deals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, it helps you out. It helps us out.
Yeah. All right. So, getting into it, obviously, Roland's not joining us, but he'd be a great asset for us since he's kind of our businessman who does all the kickstarting and crowdfunding for Silverline Comics. However, none of us are strangers to Kickstarter, so we'll use that as our entry point, as that is probably the initial thought that a lot of people have when it comes to doing their own comic and self-publishing it, because you can raise funds at the start, help cover your printing costs that way, and the Kickstarter market is on the front page. Like every day, there's a new comic on the front page of Kickstarter. Right. So it was like, when you get into all that, has anyone actually bought a comic off Kickstarter?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I bought some of the Silverline stuff when it was on Kickstarter originally.
Yeah, I mean, first Kickstarter is like the brand name. It's the Band-Aid of crowdfunding. But right. There's other forums, like we're on Fund My Comic now. There's also Indiegogo, and these are all kind of
There's another was Zoop. I think Zoop is a crowdfunding thing as well.
Yeah. So, but if you bought a comic that wasn't the Silverline comic off Kickstarter, because well, I guess I'll explain the thought process we'll walk down first for the audience, as this is something you should probably do for yourselves. When we're talking about how we're planning out a strategy, how we're planning getting publishing out, you want to think about what actually makes you want to buy a comic. And you have to think critically about your own product out there. This is kind of, we're going to talk about the soul-sucking side of art creation, which is the business capital side of it. but there are reasons why people may or may not buy a comic that they may or may not be interested in on any of these platforms, or why prefer one way versus the other. So, Jose, when you buy a comic that may not have been a Silverline comic over Kickstarter, what were some of the things that drew you to that page initially, and then what actually made you want to hit that buy button?
Well, I think I'm back to, I haven't gotten the other one yet, but the first one that I ever backed that's not Silverline stuff, right? The first one is because it was a zombie Western.
Or just straight strong
Yeah.
theming.
Yeah, as everybody, as I've mentioned before, I'm a huge Western fan.
Okay. So strong theme can carry through. How was the presentation of the page? Did they push kind of like this weird genre at the forefront? Was it laid out in a particular way that you knew exactly this is your jam and you want to get into it? Get into it?
I like when, obviously it's super beneficial, but not everybody does it. But I think like 80-90% of people do is put a video up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like when the video stays in character.
Yeah.
Sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. It's not bad one way or the other, but I'm of simple mind, so it's easy to entertain me.
Sure. I mean, at Silverline, we also do video trailers for our books too. Roland does a lot.
Yep.
Ron, I know you also did video trailers for your own Kickstarters.
Yeah, Zane DeGain and I did a video for the Westland Hamlet's Inn when we put up that Kickstarter, and we ended up doing 2 of them, which was a lot of fun. We did one for the Kickstarter page itself. We had images of artwork from Zane's artwork, the cover, multiple covers, and then we had some page samples and whatever. And the Kickstarter we did for that was something that we planned out like a mini little movie. We scripted and everything else, and we went to the local comic shop and pointed out other Western comics that were coming back into vogue. And we made that little video. We put it up on the Kickstarter, and it seemed to work really well. It was doing fine. And within about a week and a half, because I think one of the things that we definitely want to talk about here is how many people out there are using these funding programs now. And you can't just do a Kickstarter one-off and walk away from it and just keep sending links to it or whatever. You have to start promotion for a book before it's even published.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, not just supporting the Kickstarter, definitely. All right. But it doesn't hurt to do what I call mini videos. All right. That you can put on your Facebook page or on your own website or whatever. And I think we had the Kickstarter up maybe a week, 2 weeks. And we were just hanging around the comic shop one day, Zane, his wife, Olivia, and yours truly. And I just took out my video camera and basically said, let's make a video, tell people to go buy Hamlet's Inn. Mm-hmm. So we gave it to Olivia, and Zane and I just got up and we hammed it up. Just basically, buy this comic because I'm starving and I can't pay my bills. And it was wacky. It was absolutely crazy, ridiculous. And maybe, lasted all of 40 seconds. And then I posted those on every page I had, I could connect to, YouTube and LinkedIn and X and whatever. So again, the Kickstarter page is the place to start doing a video. I applaud wholly. It's what attracts me when I'm looking through Kickstarters. But again, that should just be your beginning.
Yeah. I think for all these different modes that you can take your book and get out there, one of the key supporting factors is going to be that social media presence, whether that be video or having artists do speed drawings or anything like that. The only one that isn't really it still applies to, but it's not as crucial to, which is doing only like table sales, because you'll be forced in front of people's faces a different way. But social media presence helps with the after effect of table sales. So that's something that, like to your point, Ron, with Kickstarter, with any of these crowdfunding sources, there is a lot of noise out there, especially since a lot of these platforms aren't just comics, but you're also competing with board games and every other
RPG, tabletop stuff.
Yeah. And I think in general, you also have to deal with the fact that you are competing with other hobbies as well, because you are, by definition, competing for people's free time, their leisure time. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
we're talking about self-publishing here, and when Rob Davis and I years ago got into this idea that maybe we could start publishing our own comics. All right, funding programs were in their early stages. There weren't a whole lot of them, but they were coming out there, right? And at the same time, though, we were seeing all these print-on-demand companies popping up right and left, where you could get your comics, published on your own. All right, print it up and basically decide, how many you wanted to buy and take them to conventions or sell them online yourself, set up your own website. And Rob and I, looking at how that all worked and realizing that we're basically like, and it's always good to remember the idea is we're the old guys here, okay? I mean, we're not starting out, we're not the newbies or whatever, and we want to do this because we still love making comics. So we eschewed doing the whole funding thing. We just wanted to produce our own comics, and thank goodness we had Barry Gregory and Kablam on the scene and started to produce our own comics via there, self-publishing and putting them out. My thought on this whole thing between the two is, now having been involved with other Kickstarters and GoFundMe, projects thanks to Silverline, my recommendation would be to young creators who've never published a comic at all right? And there's no big names involved, okay? So you're a rookie writer, you got rookie artists, colorists, whatever. My strong recommendation would be go the self-publishing route and print up a couple of your own comics to start with, all right? Get your feet under you, i.e. to learn the process. And you were talking about that earlier, Tim, okay? Because one of the things that young creators need to learn is basically the technicalities of making a comic book, all right? How big are the pages supposed to be? The artist needs to understand that. How do I crop them? How do I set them up? So wherever printing, outfit you go to, whether it's Kablam or dozens of others like them now, they're going to have set formats. And this becomes that learning curve for the artist to produce an actual physical comic and how to shape it and what to put it in, all right? At the same time, hopefully you've got rookie writers who are out there looking to find samples of comic scripts and to learn the format, all right, and how that all works. But again, I think self-publishing should be your first tentative, like, crawling steps. If you can actually make a physical comic and take it to your comic shop, some weekend or whatever, and show it off to your friends and whatever, it's on-the-job training. Let's put it like that. It's hands-on.
Yeah.
And you learn so much from doing that. You'll make a lot of mistakes. You'll make a lot of goofs. But ironically, sometimes you learn more from the mistakes you make. And
Absolutely.
then you just keep doing that, all right? So one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because I knew what our topic was going to be, and I'm going to put this out right here and right now, because over the last 10 years at least, I got involved with writing short little horror stories. And I would write them on a whim, just killing an afternoon, and I'd write a little script, and then I'd go places like Facebook or other social media and just post out and say, hey, I've written a little short, horror story, 5-8 pages. Anybody want to draw this? And because of my name as a professional, I would get all these young artists, sending me samples of their work, connecting with me and whatever. Thing is, all those things eventually got published and done in black and white horror anthologies. But this is what I am now proposing to any of our young creators watching this, especially the writers, all right? If there's any young comic book wannabe writer, creator out there, all right, who would like to have a copy of a short horror script, 5 to 8 pages long, all they have to do is drop me an email and say, hey, Ron, can you send me a script? And I will gladly, attach it to an email and send it back to them. So at least they will have a script to look at, to see what the format is, how it's set up, and they can go from there. And won't charge anybody a penny. This is something I want to do, and hopefully somebody can get some use out of these little scripts.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like we talked about before, like as a writer, get any chance you can to read a created script, because it helps you understand the process so much more than you would just from reading the actual finished product, because you quite literally you're transforming the entire project going from script to comic.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, from we're talking about like cutting your teeth, and I definitely think that finding some way to self-publish in general in comics is usually great, because it allows you to make the story you want to make first. Because if you're working with a bigger brand, typically you're going to be working on something for editorial. And even if you can pitch your own spin on it, like you've been a fan of this line for so long and you're able to pitch your spin on it, like the last run of the X-Men House was, you're still dealing with so many hands in the pot. And also so many of these big publishers now are going invite only, or so you can no longer solicit them. And a lot of what the editors do is they will go through on their days, and like part of their work is literally picking up independent comics or self-published comics, seeing scripts they like, seeing artwork they like,
Yep.
and trying to find a home for these people. So if you want to eventually move your way up to, being the next big Dan Mora, like being the next big Superman artist, you start like Dan Mora and work on self-published work.
No, totally. 100%. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So, and you also mentioned print on demand, which is another method that people can go about self-publishing that isn't, you can, very easily ties in with Kickstarter and all that, but doesn't necessarily require that same doesn't necessarily be tied together, because you can do things like Amazon has a print on demand service where you don't need to raise any funds from the get-go unless you're paying your artist, which you should be doing.
Amazon doesn't buy your stuff though, right? Amazon just sells it and you get a cut of what they sell.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Understanding?
Yep. So but they also will provide print services for yourself. So if you're doing your own own copies for convention, or doing your own if you're doing your own comp copies, but doing your own stuff to take to boothing, you also have that option in that same interface where you manage inventory to then print stuff for yourself.
Do you got to pay full price?
I don't believe so. I haven't used Asm KDP, but I know some people who really like it, because I believe it is printing more or less at cost plus service fee.
It is. No, Rob and I use it all the time, i.e. Amazon, okay?
Yeah.
Not only for Airship 27, but a lot of the comics we've done. What we discovered was that if you're doing single comics like floppies, 22, 24 pages long, most of the regular guys out there today, including Kablam, are the way to go economically, okay? And what they'll charge you per unit, all right? And then what you can, jack it up when you get your copies in. The beauty of this is you don't have to buy a single copy. You get a prototype and that's it, all right? You don't have to keep inventory, which was always the appeal of on-demand printing. Whereas if you've done a bunch of floppies or whatever and you want to put together a graphic novel that's going to go, 30, 40, 50 or more pages, Amazon economically is the way to go. They're such a huge outfit, all right, that they can give you a much lower per unit price. Mm-hmm. But the same concept. You just, submit the files, basically pick, they'll tell you what it's going to cost you per unit, and then you give them the sale price that they put up on the page where they sell it. And of course, obviously, the appeal of Amazon is they're so huge, all right? And you have a link that you can tell your friends, hey, my comic, my graphic novel is up at Amazon, and give them a link to it. And the way you go, all right? I mean, that it's selling tools, and that's what all those things are. And, Kablam and the folks there soon learned that young creators wanted that platform where they can sell online, and they ultimately ended up creating that sub site of theirs called indieplanet, .com. Now I get a kick out of, we had what's his name, Pero, as our guest last week, and he lambasted the whole Kablam and indie whatever, right? And I just kept my mouth, okay. The truth of the matter is, okay, kudos to all these small publishers, right, of independent comics, because they make it possible for people who would never have an opportunity to get their own comics ever made. All right.
Yeah.
And is the majority of it crap? Yeah, totally. But what the heck? All right. If in that sub amateurish stuff, you find new talent with real chops, all right, even one, it's worth it. I mean, if you find the next Neil Adams, all right, or the next Alan Moore or whatever, all right, who never would have had a chance with the big boys, suddenly, thanks to, on-demand printing, can get their comics out there for the world to see and get that step up, then, I mean, I learned years ago when I was a teenager, one of the greatest science fiction writers ever was a guy named Theodore Sturgeon, and he had this quote about creative endeavors, and he said 90% of all creative endeavors are pure crap. So whatever you're doing, whether it's painting or sculpturing or whatever, 90% of it's pure crap, 10% of it's the good stuff, and that applies. Okay, and it shouldn't be a deterrent. It should be, okay, I'm gonna work my butt off and publish a comic book. I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna get somebody who knows how to draw, and that should be the next step in what we're talking about here, is how do you put a team together? If and again, when I got into comics, the only way you could work with a team was pack your bags, say goodbye to mom and dad, and move to New York, and then pray you could get in to Marvel, DC, or all these big companies. All right, and then once you were there, they would partner you up with somebody. Well, I think we're living this golden age of the independents, and the internet has made it possible for creators around the world to connect with each other.
Right.
So if you're a young writer and there's nobody in your town or that you went to high school with or whatever, all right, who has the ability to draw a stick figure, don't worry about it. Go online and find these sites, these social media sites, where you'll find all these young artists doing the same thing you're doing, looking for a young writer to hook up with, somebody they can partner up with and create and put things out, and where you go. I mean, one of our regular artists now at Silverline is Javier Lugo, right?
Javier.
And
Love Javier.
Javier's a great guy. Well, I literally ran into Javier almost 20 years ago on a social media site. I had run into a filmmaker from New Hampshire, where I live, who had made an independent vampire movie called God of Vampires, right? And we got to talking. He gave me a free disc copy of his film, which is a riot. It was really a hoot. 90 minutes long, filmed it locally around New England. So in the process of talking, I he was going to like take it to film festivals throughout New England, New York, and whatever. And I suggested the possibilities of doing a 16-page comic book that he could help self-publish, print it up, and bring it with it to film festivals. And outside each of the theaters, studios, or whatever, he'd have a table with T-shirts with his logo, God of Vampires, and this little comic book, black and white. All right. The idea being, what I would write was a prequel to his film, because now I'd seen it and he'd shown me the script. So I write a 16-page prequel story that ends on page 16 exactly where his movie starts.
Nice.
Right? So I've got the script. Who's going to draw it? Looking online, and I see this kid from Florida, Javier Lugo, right? Showing off some of his work. Drop him a line. Javier goes, Yeah, I'd love to do this. All right. Send him the script. Javier starts working on it. In the meantime, we need an inker. Okay. Back online, social media, right? Again, this was like I said, this was like 15 years ago. All right. I find a guy from Mexico City who's a letterer looking for a project to work on. Told him what Javier and I were doing. He said, have Javier send me the pages, digitally, and here's the script. So now we're having it inked. It's drawn in Florida, inked in Mexico, and we ended up with a letterer from Great Britain. You gotta love the internet, guys. You gotta love the whole world is now a team, right? All the pages came in. We digitally gave the pages to this young director producer. He went to a local printer, had tons of, I think he had 100 copies made up, right? Within 2 or 3 film festivals, he sold them all. He was selling them for $1 a piece, right? And went out and printed another 100 and then printed another 100. And that's how Harvey and I first hooked up all these years ago. And God of Vampires, the prequel, was one of the first things that he ever did or had published. And it spurred him. He just went on to do tons of greater things since then.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, I'm on Wolf Hunter. I'm working with a guy out of Jakarta, Indonesia, named Honor. And the dude's work is so good. He does this really big, cool blend of Western comics and manga because, just geographically, those are like, you got both influences in like comics from the GIs, manga, and from the Japanese trading. And so it's this very cool art style that's coming in. I'm like, this is great. I love it.
I mean, it's so great. The technology has turned things around and made the doors open for young creators. All right. Again, like I said, that they aren't stymied by geography or, just this limited, narrow path that you had to struggle to get through to show your work and have people, look at you or even recognize you or whatever. All right. And I mean, I'm doing, Beyond the Stars with Andrea Bermuda. We're almost ready to wrap it up. We just had our Kickstarter, at the end of last year for issue number 5, and 6 is almost done and ready to come out. An Italian artist who I never, ever would have met had it not been for the internet and surfing it one night and finding him. And you know what, guys? I still do that. On downtime some nights, I'll just sit there and surf the web looking for artists. Yeah. And see who's out there who I don't know.
Everybody else is going through their reels, and Ron is going through artist submissions and artist pages and whatnot.
Well, we all do it. I mean, I see at least a half dozen young artists posting on Facebook every day, looking for work, looking for a project to work on, to show their wares. Okay. And I mean, and the thing with that is, obviously, you're going to have some guys, looking for a paycheck, and that's all well and good, okay. Whereas you can negotiate rates if you have that kind of money, but then you're also going to find young guys who understand they're just breaking into the business and are willing to work with a young writer and letterer, colorist, or whatever, to the point of saying, okay, well, we will do a partnership. And if this ever takes off and does, well for us financially, or somebody should pick it up or whatever, we split the proceeds. This is it. Draw up a simple contract, everybody sign it, and away you go.
Yeah. There's a whole subreddit I bring up every time the conversation comes up called comic collaboration. And that's literally what it is. And they have a really good tagging system too, where people will be able to put how much experience they have, what their skill level is, and whether or not they're asking for a page rate or collaboration. And if they're an artist or a writer. And so if people who will make posts saying I'm an artist looking for collaboration, these are genres I want to work in. If you're a writer, you say this is a script I made, I'm willing to do this page rate or want to work in collaboration for this. And it's this really cool way of making an old style job board, but for comics, just we do on that. Yeah,
totally.
So
I've had the experience now of having artists, hit me up over the last few years. Dario Carrasco out of what is it, Seattle, I believe. Dario had just wrapped up some work on Star Wars for Dark Horse Comics, and went to one of these sites that you're talking about, Tim, where people, post, what they're doing, what they're looking for, and whatever. And the kicker was Dario had come up with a character who he envisioned as a 1950s style Batman called the Gargoyle. But he didn't have anybody to write it. So Dario literally posts on this page, right, which has got all these people of various skills, right? I'm Dario Carrasco. I've worked for Dark Horse. I've done, Star Wars and this and that. And I'm looking for somebody to help me bring this character to life. There's no money involved, but if we work together and we get strips done or whatever, we'll get him published. I can promise you that. Well, I looked at samples of his work and said, wow, I just want to work with this guy. He is really talented. And, emailed him, and he got back to me. I said, hey, explain the character. Tell me what you got. He explained who the character was, secret identity, all that good stuff. I came up with some plot ideas for a couple of 8-page stories, showed him the plot. He was beside himself. We wrote him. We ultimately got him illustrated and drawn and published over the years. And Dario's still working for the big boys today. And every now and then he bugs me about, hey, we got to do a Gargoyles graphic novel someday. I said, when you're ready, I'm ready. Okay.
That's awesome.
But again, it's that you go to conventions, you go online, and you network. And as you start getting published and you start, making a name for yourself in the industry, other people take notice, just as you do with them. All right. And that's what it's all about. When I first broke into the business for real, I was reading so many comics and looking at artists whose work I admired. And when I found those, particular artists that I, again, loved, I would literally write them in care of their managing editors. Literally write, a letter. Again, no internet. So you write on typewriter, write a letter and say, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm a writer, and I saw your work, for Malibu or whatever, smaller companies. I'd fold that thing up, put the guy's name on the front of the envelope with a stamp, and then put it in a bigger envelope, legal size, to edit, basically addressed to the editor of that publication, which was in the comic, right? Send it off, and basically with a note saying, would you please forward this to this particular gentleman? And all of them did, to the point where weeks later, I'd get a letter back from that particular artist saying, thanks for the nice words. I appreciate it. Let me know what you're doing. Bob, I'll check your work out, stuff like that. I made so many friends in those first few years I was into the business. And one of them, of all of them, was Rob Davis.
Yeah.
And that's how Rob and I first became pals, because I noticed his work. I absolutely loved it. We got, to talking and stayed friends all these years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we talked a bit about crowdfunding and print on demand. So another method that also has a very low barrier to entry and now is doing a digital comic. And of course, you can also do this in tandem with the print on demand. It's particularly if you're doing a service like Amazon, where you can also create an e-copy that goes to Kindle at the same time.
Yeah.
But there's also services that allow you to give a little more control, and also might be a little bit easier to break through the noise on. Something like Drive-Thru Comic, or any of these other services where you can put out your comic as a EPUB or PDF. And
Is that the same as Drive-Thru RPG?
Same company, yeah. Same
Okay.
company, yeah. So, which if you're in the RPG space, Drive-Thru RPG is known for being very friendly to small RPG creators and people who make their own page rules, and giving them almost an equal shot on the front page and allowing them to do their own promotions and sales on that. So for a comic, very similar deal where it's very easy to do your own promotions as an independent creator. And that'd be like if you wanted to do something that is just like a digital version of a straight 22 pages that just gets ported over to however views on monitor. but then there are also places that do, but they probably to do its own like unique formatting, designed more for scrolling. Things like webtoons and a few others that are more so built for vertical that will break it up panel by panel, and particularly webtoons also will give you the option of getting monetized down the road as you continue to put out your own work.
Webtoons, the format for comics are different though. It's not like a
Yes.
11 by 17 format. It's scrolling down. So even when you do it digitally, you have to create that continuous loop for scroll, which is fine if you understand that you should the colors for like from the bottom of this page bleed into the colors for the next page basically, or if you have like some kind of intricate fancy border that tends to help with the feet or the scroll. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because I think that's also something that's happening interestingly. I have mixed feelings on it, but Marvel and DC are now also getting into webtoons. But what they end up having to do is going through and hiring a whole new set of artists that essentially reformat all of the comics that they're porting over to webtoons. So it's they created a whole other department for this, which job creation was cool.
That's wild.
Yeah, but it's kind of wild to think about. But then also you have all the small creators there who are like, that we're doing this so we don't have to compete with Marvel. But yeah, so if you're, this is probably a conversation that you'll need to have as a creative team when you're going initial ideation, right? Is the plan to be a webtoons comic? Because that's going to inform how you do your layouts in the first place. So I guess particularly for like the artist side, what are some considerations of both in like layout, how much you like size and focus the objects in the panel, and then also like because also coloring, the colors are going to look differently on a screen than they do versus printed on paper.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's a whole different, from color standpoint, it's a whole different thing. I mean, when you think of old school like me, and I know Roland likes the CMYK as well as I'm very familiar with colors and everything on CMYK. What I don't work very often at all in is the RGB aspect of it. But I know that most of the stuff I do is CMYK. But if you're looking at doing something that's going to be digital, even if it's a matter of it's going to be digital, but it's going to be printed also, then you need to think in RGB mode, because it will it'll change and kind of, you'll lose a lot of the the vibrance and stuff that is on an all digital format when you go into printing. I mean, CMYK has kind of a wider range than RGB, but RGB has more saturated, on-screen presence. So I know a lot of the digital colorists are using RGB now, but there's still a lot of them that stick with CMYK. But you need to kind of look at what your format's going to be. Are you going to be all digital or some digital with it? And also, when you look at things like, how you're going to market it, if you're marketing it over a lot of digital platforms, even though you're doing traditional printing on the main book, is, you may have to go through and either create an edited version of that promotional material that's, more vibrant and all that, or you do your work, prep for that, and then convert it. It's typically not a straight conversion, because I know for me, a lot of times when I go through and I was playing with doing RGB and all that, and there's certain color saturation, and it's ironic because it's something I'm looking at with this cover I'm doing with Ron, is looking at the saturation levels of the color of the cover. Typically on the interior book, you're usually doing about a 240. You combine all the color saturation, about 240. More modern, some of the newer papers 260. But when I would go through and I would say, all right, I'm going to do stuff in RGB, and then I would convert it to CMYK, my numbers were jacked, and primarily that conversion would take and just shoot the black level up. I normally try to stick around, 20K, 20% K. And I know for like covers, I think you can go a little more. You can go like 30K and all that, but it starts to get washed out. But when you convert, all of a sudden, this color that, is like a dark blue would sit there and convert to CMYK, and it would shoot and put like 60% black, way too much. So then you have to go and fiddle with it, and find a color that's in line with that in CMYK using more of the CMY to compensate for the K, whereas in the conversion it just said, oh, well, there's a certain percent of black, let's dump that in there. So it's a lot of thinking ahead and prepping for that. That has to do with where you want to go and deciding how you want to approach the project, because that can change depending on what your stuff is.
Yeah. I know there's someone who was talking about recently. Went from doing zines to webtoons. I talked about how one of the weird things I had to get used to was, or that they played around with, was being able to use some thinner lines on their outlines because they were able to use a deeper black on digital, because you can get it sounds dumb, but you can get a black that's more black looking at your phone than you can on print. And so they're able to create that contrast and the difference between background and foreground with using a thinner line than they were used to.
Yeah, well, you also have to think about, one thing is typically when you use a CMYK format and you're using blacks, you usually have to create a call it a BB channel, which is a backup black channel. Mm-hmm. And that's a color that goes in behind the black. That's typically in CMYK it's a 60-40-40 grayish color that goes through, because if you don't have something like that, typically think about a page that you have, let's just keep it very simple. Okay, you have a black box on the page. In the background, you have a gradient that goes from the background from light to dark, or maybe it has a swirl, right? Let's put a swirl in the background. When you put the blacks on it, you actually get bleed through the black when you do the printing. So you get areas that you see that swirl in the black. So you have to put this BB channel behind it so that it goes and it gives a more pronounced solid black in the black areas. And then you're not bleeding through those different color variations and saturations through, because you can definitely see it. So that's something that, learned from Malibu a long time ago, is to, create those.
Wouldn't it make the blended pencil part and whatnot, that it would make that spotty, like make it, if you don't put the black background layer? Or
typically on pencils, on pencils into the black transition, is your pencils should be either black or white on right. on the inked areas. So if you have areas that are still penciled that are grays, then you haven't completely set it up right to get rid of that.
I'm talking about you can have pencils, right? Solid, clean pencils and whatnot, but then you also have rendered pencils, which are like water soluble graphite. You want it to look brushed, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen pencils like that, and if I threw on a trapping without the trapping layer, it would get all speckly, because it would try and pick up those little blacks inside of it. Like it looked like it had freckles.
So let me
Yeah.
ask, Dave, any chance, I mean, this is a really fascinating discussion. Any chance you can put up that cover that you're working on and give them a little peek at what we're talking about?
Oh, well, I can. You haven't seen it yet.
I
But
think
yeah,
we just gave you the okay.
I've seen stages of it.
yeah. All right, let me share my
Show and
screen.
tell. Show and tell.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think Ron just wants to see it himself.
Right. Right. Ron heard, oh yeah, this cover I'm working on for Ron, and Ron's like,
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm running into is I'm running into a saturation level, and Ron knows what it is.
Oh yes.
There's okay. Let me do this. Before I do that, sorry, I have to scroll over here. 1 sec. Get colors out. I'm just taking things and getting back to
That's all right.
back to the actual line art itself, the original. There we go. All right, let me share this.
you guys are seeing it here first.
That's right. All our loyal viewers out there are in for a treat. There she be.
So there's a pretty heavy concentration of black.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I did was I modified the line art here, and I toned down some of the background
Yes.
lines in that here. So you've got a lighter hue here, and then you have kind of a medium hue, and then the actual blacks here in the body, right? So I am going to go, and I'm gonna, instead of turning all these on, I'm gonna shock Ron here. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna turn everything back on.
Anticipation.
Exactly, right?
Start biting my fingernails in a minute.
Right.
So you want me to just, leave it like this, right?
Yeah, right.
All right.
You
So
are a cruel man, Dave.
yeah, I know. All right, here goes. This is
What?
Wow.
Here we go.
so you can see now with the background colors that saturation here with the guys, it's just enough to push him forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, because of the saturation in the background, these lighter grays actually seem like they recede a little bit more.
Yep.
And this one was tough for me because this is what I would normally do the reverse of, is I would tone down the background, and I would go and take the main character and play around with making it more vibrant and stuff. And I did that as much as I could, but because the whole basis of the character and the background characters there's so much black, I had to offset that and reverse it. So I did more of the saturated light coming from behind to make him pop a little more. So I've kind of been playing around. What I probably have to do is go through and desaturate these characters here some, and but too much, and they start to blend in with the background. So I'm really kind of playing around with that. But that's where I am with it. And there's a lot of with layers where I've gone through and rendered some things and toned it down with some of these backgrounds.
Man, I love that. I absolutely love it.
Where did that go?
Yeah, that was cool, Dave.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of the ones where it was a tough thing to work with, and I had to go ahead and just go through. Let's see some of this stuff I went through, and I had to over render behind like these clouds, these smoke things. I had to over render because I knew I was putting a hard light and they would desaturate. So lots of stuff to go and kind of play around with and all that. But like I didn't really touch much of the hair, for example. I'll go through and put a little bit more, but yeah, it's those are the kind of things you want to look at. And my concern with this is the print saturation. This is actually a little bit too much for these characters, these bodies. But like I said, I have a color here, which is actually like a 260. But when I go through and load the selection here for the mask here and go down to this one here. So you can see on this here, there is, wow, not showing that well here. What we do is trace, there's lines going around all of the legs and everything here and around his foot. But you can see that when I go through, if I fill it, see how it desaturates that? So that's the color I should be getting to, but it seems like it blends more with the background.
It does.
Yeah.
Than with that. So I'm playing around with that. I mean, other than that, this entire thing's finished coloring. But yeah, that's what we're looking at. But
That's really
knowing that this is going to print, I have to stay within those bounds of the printing. Right. And I know that the interior pages of the book are a lot more rough, and they soak up a lot more than the cover. So I have a little more leniency on the cover than I have on the interior. This was an interior, I wouldn't even be anywhere near doing this, but cool. That's what I was leading to on, saturations, and why I referenced this cover for him. But,
yeah. I mean, you definitely tell like the thought process there of going into knowing the medium that you're planning on going into versus the other way. Yeah. So we kind of talk about the considerations that make if you're going to be publishing all digitally. And of course you can also do a mix of both, in which case, like Dave was saying, like you'll need to find a happy medium that looks good both on digital and in print. So the last thing to talk about tonight would be probably the most straightforward form of self-publishing that we've all had some of experience in, which is the direct-to-consumer at the booth style of getting a work out there, which can be done as zine style publishing, but now with the wonders of print on demand, you don't necessarily need to do the same old thing we used to do, where you take your 22 pages or whatever to Kinko's or Copycats and just put in.
I remember those nights.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can use print on demand. If you still have a Kinko's in your town, where do you live? But you can use them. I'm not sure what the cost would look like anymore. But also, depending on your lifetime plan for this book and your schedule for con attendance, you could look at using a larger, more bulk printer or dropship printer, where you could get, potentially a more beneficial cost break per issue, but at a larger quantity than using a print-on-demand service. However, you will need to sell aggressively and often.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep. Hey, before we check out, again, real quick, Tim, I sent you and Jose the cover to the Mr. Jigsaw
Yes.
one-shot special, How to Make a Comic. If you want to put that up real quick. That's for, again, all you rookies out there who have never made a comic at all. It's pretty well self-contained. It has a small 10-page script, shows you the format, the scripting. Gary Carter, the artist creator of Mr. Jigsaw, shows you how to interpret a script, and Rob Davis how to put it all together and get it formatted for wherever you decide to publish it. This thing's available at Amazon, and it's not that expensive at all, and can be like a real helpful tool to have in your library. So I just wanted to get that out per, like I said, discussion we were doing tonight. Thanks, Tim. And we should also mention, to be fair, the image that David was so kind enough to give everybody here a sneak peek of was illustrated by the one and only really great professional Del Barris, which is part of a new project that Del, David, myself, and another gentleman are involved with called Black Terror 2.0. And once it's wrapped up, it's off to Ben Dunn and Antarctic Press, and we'll see where it goes with that. There you go.
Yeah. And then I didn't really feel like there's one last way of self-publishing now that's available since Diamond has collapsed. However, it's not really like, I don't feel like it's worth talking about a whole lot unless you are independently wealthy, which, let's be honest, for working comics are probably not.
Working on.
But the distributors now will allow independent solicitations or submissions to them. So if you're really like, you create your own LLC, you have your own book, you can submit through Penguin or whatever distributor. However, that requires you then having the credentialing to get into it and pay the fees and the first costs, and then also having the reputation with the shops to actually place orders through the distributors, because now you need to market business to business side. So you can do it, but maybe if you have an entertainment lawyer in your pocket.
Well, I think I read an article where Filbo was starting to do the individual printing too.
Yeah.
I think they were offering that as well.
Yeah. So it is a little jankier to get through. So, but I have to mention it because it is an option out there, and if you happen to know a good entertainment lawyer who can navigate that for you,
right?
Maybe
exactly.
But for the most part, it's very easy now to get a comic on Amazon, self-print, or Kablam, or just online, or if Ron really wanted to, Ron could put out, or I also have a website, but Ron could put out just 22 pages every 6 months on his own website and then market it that way, and then sell Google AdSense on the site or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Ko-fi as well, a bunch of other things. Patreon, a lot of comics are out on Patreon now, and you essentially put out a few free 4 panels on your Instagram or social media or whatever, and then you just charge.
Patreon's a lot of work. I mean, self-publishing in general is a lot of work.
It is, but
again, it's going to be amazing, and we're going to make a comic in a matter of minutes, and everyone's going to pick it up like it was the Spanish flu or something. But it really is a lot of hard work, but the payoff in the end is absolutely enjoyable. I've self-published my own book, and just having that book in your hand when you're done is just it means everything in your heart.
Yeah.
No, it never gets tired, ever. Every time you get a new issue of something that you've been involved with the creation of, it's a rush. Okay, I mean, any new comic I'm working on, when I get my copies of it, regardless of who's publishing it or whether Rob and I did it ourselves or whatever, to get that hard copy, all right, I mean, I feel like I'm a 13-year-old kid again. Honestly, all right, that's the rush. All right, that dream never ever wanes. And then I'll sit there and read it cover to cover, whether I wrote it or not, and marvel at the artwork and marvel at the process of how comics are made and how they come together. All right, it's a joy I never ever want to lose.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the other thing that's nice is we'll use Black Terror as an example, is Ron went through and he wrote it, and he gave us a finished script. Here's a script. Then it went to Dell, and Dell did his style, his interpretation on it. And then Ron and I talked about some things that, hey, maybe we should, does this make sense? Or, what do we have for this? And hey, I'm going through and and I'm making some characters purple, but there's a reason for it. And
Totally.
And we go back and forth, and the end result is, by the time the thing is done, Ron is going to get a book back that's not the same that he wrote when we started the project.
Exactly.
So there's going to be the overall will be, but there'll be slightly different things because of the other input.
Each creator will have contributed, all right, to making that comic, to making that story the way it wraps up and finishes. And we can't, ignore our Nigerian friend Dami, who's doing the lettering now, and doing the last few pages that you gave us, Dell. Dave. All right. So I know Dell is chomping at the bits. Dell is like, driving me crazy like every other day. When's the book going to be finished? When are you going to send it to Ben? Whatever. Okay. So this is one of those kind of things where Ben gave me the green, light to go ahead and make something happen with this character. And thanks to Dave and Dell and Dami, we're doing that.
Right.
What happens after that is up to Ben. If Ben says, yeah, we want to run with this, then Ron's going to have to find some time, sit down, start writing issue number 2.
Oh, cool.
And away we go.
Right.
Okay. Well, next week we'll be back, and our topic will be how to get gigs as a comic artist. So,
I'll be taking notes.
Yeah. There you go. So we're talking a bit more about the job board postings as well as networking and all that stuff. But I'm sure Jose will have plenty to talk about, being the working artist here.
Listen, I'm not above offering donuts.
There you go.
Right. Bribery sometimes works.
There you go. But we'll also talk about how to offer those gigs as a writer a little bit, because it's pay your artist. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday on their respective days. Make sure to check out the rest of the Madness Entertainment Group network. Check out the Roku channel, where you can just have entertainment news and talk shows just blasting in your ears 24/7. But until that time,
hey,
make mine.
Make mine Silverline.
I'm Andy Smith. Make mine Silverline.